We bought a haunted house. Then it started talking back. The voice came from inside the wall. Not behind it. Not from the other side of the drywall where pipes ran and insulation sagged in pink clumps. Inside the wall itself, as if the plaster and wood and decades of paint had learned how to form words. And the thing it said, the thing that turned my blood to ice water and made my wife drop the glass she was holding so that it shattered across the kitchen tile in a spray of orange juice and crystal, was my name. Not a whisper. Not a murmur I could explain away. It said, Daniel, the way my mother used to say it when I was a child and she was standing at the bottom of the staircase calling me down for dinner. Warm. Familiar. Patient. Except my mother had been dead for 6 years, and whatever was speaking from inside the walls of 414 Cresthaven Lane was not her. Megan didn't scream. That's the part that disturbs me the most when I think back on it. She didn't scream because by that point, 3 months into living in that house, screaming had stopped being a response either of us was capable of. Screaming is what you do when something shocks you. What was happening to us had moved past shock and into something else entirely, something I still don't have the right word for. Resignation maybe. Or surrender. She just stood there with orange juice pooling around her bare feet, glass splinters catching the overhead light, and she looked at me with an expression that I will carry to my grave. It wasn't fear. It was confirmation. It was her eyes saying, I told you. I told you from the very first night. And you didn't listen. She was right. I didn't listen. And everything that happened, everything I'm about to tell you, is my fault. I need to go back. I need to explain how we got there, how two reasonably intelligent, skeptical adults ended up trapped in a nightmare that I'm not entirely sure has ended even now, sitting in a motel room 2 states away with the lights on and the television playing at a volume that's probably irritating the people in the next room. I need to tell it from the beginning because the beginning matters. The beginning is where all the warnings were clear as road signs, and we drove past every single one of them. Megan and I had been married for 2 years when we started looking for our first house. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, both working decent jobs. Me in IT consulting, her as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center downtown. We were 29 and 27 respectively, and we'd saved enough for a reasonable down payment on something modest. We weren't looking for a dream house. We were looking for a start. Somewhere with a yard for the dog we planned to adopt, a 2nd bedroom we could eventually turn into a nursery, a kitchen where we didn't have to stand sideways to open the refrigerator. Normal things. The things you want when you're building a life with someone. Our realtor was a woman named Trish who wore too much perfume and talked about every property like it was the last house on earth. She'd shown us maybe 15 places over 2 months, and each one had something wrong with it. Too expensive, too far from work, foundation issues, neighbors who stared a little too long from their porches. We were getting discouraged. Then Trish called on a Tuesday evening and told us she had something special. It just came on the market today, she said, and I could hear her trying to contain her excitement. A colonial revival. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, detached garage, 1/4-acre lot. It's in Millbrook, right off Route 16. And the price? Danny, the price is unreal. She wasn't exaggerating. The house was listed at almost 40% below comparable properties in the area. Megan and I drove out the next morning, a Saturday in early September, the kind of day where the sky is so blue it looks artificial. Millbrook was a small community about 20 minutes east of Charlotte, mostly farmland that had been carved up into residential lots over the past few decades. The house was at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, set back from the road behind a row of mature oaks whose canopy turned the front yard into a cathedral of green shade. It was painted white with black shutters, 2 stories, a wraparound porch with columns, the kind of house you see in magazines about southern living. It looked like it was posing for a photograph. Why is it so cheap? That was Megan, standing on the front walkway with her arms crossed, already suspicious. She was like that, practical to the point of pessimism. I used to joke that she could find the downside of winning the lottery. But standing there looking at that house, I should have listened to whatever instinct was making her jaw tighten. Trish waved the question away like a fruit fly. The previous owners relocated for work. They needed a quick sale. It's been on the market for about 12 hours and I'm telling you, it won't last the weekend. If you're new here and you enjoy real, disturbing stories like this, consider subscribing. I upload every day and it really helps the channel grow. We walked through the house and it was, by every objective measure, perfect. Hardwood floors throughout, recently refinished to a warm honey color. A kitchen with granite countertops and stainless appliances. A living room with a stone fireplace and built-in bookshelves. Upstairs, the master bedroom had a bay window that looked out over the backyard, which sloped gently down to a tree line where the property bordered a stretch of undeveloped woods. There was a clawfoot tub in the master bath, a sunroom off the back of the house that caught the morning light, a basement that was dry and clean with high enough ceilings that you could finish it into usable space. I was in love with it before we'd finished the first floor. Megan was harder to read. She kept touching the walls, running her fingertips along the door frames, pausing in the hallways as if she were listening for something. At one point, upstairs in the second bedroom, she stood completely still and stared at the closet door for what felt like a long time. "You okay?" I asked her. "It smells weird in here," she said. "Like something old. Not bad, just old. Like a library basement." I sniffed the air. "I don't smell anything." "Forget it," she said, but she didn't touch the walls again after that. We put in an offer that afternoon. Full asking price, no contingencies except the standard inspection. The sellers accepted within 2 hours. Looking back, I realized the speed should have been another warning. Nobody accepts an offer on a house that fast unless they want to be rid of it. But we were so excited, so blinded by the mathematics of what we were getting for the money, that we couldn't see what should have been obvious. The house wasn't a deal. It was a trap with a welcome mat. We moved in the first week of October. The weather had turned, the oaks going amber and copper, and the house looked even better in the fall light. We unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, argued about where to hang pictures. The normal, tedious, wonderful chaos of making a new place yours. For the first week, everything was fine. The house was quiet. The neighborhood was quiet. At night you could hear crickets and the occasional distant train, and it felt like we'd stumbled into the kind of peace that people spend their whole lives chasing. Then the noises started. The first time was on a Thursday night, 9 days after we'd moved in. We were in bed, Megan reading and me scrolling through my phone, when we both heard it, a single deliberate knock from somewhere downstairs. Not a settling sound, not the hot water heater kicking on, not the refrigerator cycling. A knock, like someone rapping their knuckles on a wooden surface. "What?" Then silence. "Did you hear that?" Megan whispered. "Yeah." I got up, checked the first floor, checked the locks, checked the garage. Nothing. I came back to bed and told her it was probably the house settling. New construction settles, old construction settles more. It was nothing. She gave me a look that I didn't fully understand at the time, skeptical, searching, like she was trying to decide whether I was lying to her or lying to myself. She went back to her book and didn't mention it again. But the knocking came back. The next night, and the night after that, and the night after that. Always between 10 and midnight. Always a single knock, sometimes from the living room, sometimes from the kitchen, once from the basement. It was never loud enough to be threatening, never aggressive, almost polite in its restraint. It was as if the house was testing us, seeing how much we'd tolerate, calibrating how far it could push before we pushed back. I started keeping a mental catalog of rational explanations. Thermal expansion. Pipes adjusting to temperature changes. The wood floors contracting as the humidity dropped with the season. A branch from one of the oaks tapping against the siding. I had an answer for everything, and every answer was reasonable, and every one of them was wrong. 2 weeks after the knocking started, I heard the scratching. I was alone in the house. Megan had a late shift at the clinic and wouldn't be home until after 9. I was in the kitchen making dinner, nothing elaborate, just pasta and a jar of sauce, when I heard it coming from the wall behind the stove. A slow, rhythmic scratching, like fingernails being dragged down drywall. Not frantic, not panicked, the way a trapped animal would sound. Deliberate. Almost lazy. As if whatever was making the sound knew I was listening and wanted me to know it was there. I put my ear against the wall. The scratching stopped immediately. I stood there for a full minute, my cheek pressed against the cool plaster, holding my breath. Nothing. I pulled away. 3 seconds later, the scratching resumed. It went on for 20 minutes. I tried to record it on my phone, but when I played back the audio, the sound was barely there, just a faint, ambiguous noise that could have been anything. When Megan got home, I didn't tell her. I don't know why. Maybe I was embarrassed by how much it had rattled me. Maybe I was already beginning the process of rationalization that would carry us through the next 2 months while the house slowly took us apart. I told myself it was mice. Every old house has mice. I'd call an exterminator in the morning. The exterminator came, a weathered man named Carl who wore coveralls and smelled like chemicals. He checked the walls, the attic, the basement, the crawl spaces. He put out traps and poison packets. He found nothing. No droppings, no gnaw marks, no nests, no entry points. "House is clean," he told me, standing in the driveway with his clipboard. "Cleanest I've seen in a while, actually. Whatever you're hearing, it's not rodents." I thanked him and paid his fee and didn't mention the scratching to Megan. But that night, lying in bed in the dark, she said something that made me go cold. "I hear it too, Danny. The scratching. I hear it in the walls when you're not home." I didn't say anything. I just reached for her hand under the covers and held it, and we lay there listening to the silence of the house, which didn't feel like silence at all. It felt like something holding its breath. The progression was gradual enough that we could deny it for a long time. The scratching became a background feature, something we got used to the way you get used to a neighbor's barking dog or the hum of a highway. Then came the lights. The hallway fixture on the second floor would turn off when we walked under it and turn back on after we'd passed. Not every time, maybe one night out of 3, but consistently enough that we both stopped using the hallway light entirely, preferring to navigate by the glow of our phones. The lamp in the living room would flicker when the television was on, always during commercial breaks, as if something was drawing on the same electrical current. I had an electrician come out. He found nothing wrong with the wiring, which he said had been updated relatively recently. "Whoever lived here before you put in good work," he said. "This is about as solid as residential wiring gets." Then the objects started moving. Small things at first. I'd leave my keys on the hook by the front door and find them on the kitchen counter. Megan would set her phone on the nightstand before bed and wake up to find it on the bathroom sink. We blamed each other at first. "Did you move my keys?" "I didn't touch your keys." And then we blamed ourselves. Absent-mindedness. Stress. The fog of adjusting to a new routine. But the things kept moving, and they moved in ways that were harder to explain away. One morning I came downstairs and every cabinet in the kitchen was open. Not ajar, not slightly unlatched. Wide open, like someone had walked along the counter and methodically swung each door to its fullest extent. The effect was jarring, almost theatrical, as if the kitchen had been staged for a photograph or a crime scene. I stood in the doorway staring at it for a long time, the coffee I'd been craving suddenly irrelevant. Then I closed them all one by one and went to work and didn't tell Megan. But Megan had her own incidents she wasn't telling me about. I only learned this later, after everything fell apart, when we were sitting in the parking lot of a Denny's at 2 in the morning trying to piece together a timeline. She told me about the afternoon she'd come home from work and found every photograph in the house turned face down. Every single one. The framed prints on the walls, the snapshots on the refrigerator, the wedding photo on the mantel. All of them lying flat or facing the wall, as if whatever shared the house with us couldn't stand to look at our faces. She put them all back and hadn't said a word. She told me about the time she was in the shower and the water turned scalding hot. Not gradually, not the way it does when someone flushes a toilet elsewhere in the house, but instantaneously, the temperature jumping from warm to blistering in less than a second. She'd thrown herself against the glass door to escape it and found a bruise on her shoulder the next day that she told me was from bumping into a door frame at work. She told me about the mirrors. This part is hard to write because the mirrors are where things cross the line from strange to something else. Something that felt intentional, malicious, aware. Megan had noticed it before I did. She was standing in front of the bathroom mirror one evening, brushing her teeth, and she saw movement in the reflection behind her. Not a shape, not a figure, just movement. A shifting of shadow in the corner of the reflected room that didn't correspond to anything in the actual room. She spun around. Nothing. She looked back at the mirror. The shadow was gone. She told herself she was tired. A week later, she was doing her makeup in the same mirror and realized that her reflection was wrong. Not dramatically wrong, not a horror movie distortion. Subtly wrong. The reflection's eyes were slightly off-center, as if they were looking at a point just to the left of where her real eyes were focused. She leaned closer. The reflection leaned closer. She tilted her head. The reflection tilted its head. Everything matched except the eyes. The eyes were looking at something she couldn't see. She stopped using that mirror. She started doing her makeup in the car before work, using the visor mirror, and I noticed but didn't ask about it because by that point we had both become experts at not asking about things. I had my own experience with the mirrors about a week later. I was brushing my teeth before bed, not really paying attention, just going through the motions the way you do when you're exhausted and running on autopilot. I rinsed, spit, looked up at the mirror to check my face, and my reflection was already looking at me. Not looking where my eyes were, looking at me. The way you look at someone who's walked into a room you've been waiting in. There was a fractional delay, maybe half a second, where my reflection was still and I was moving, and in that half second I felt a fear so pure and so absolute that my vision went gray at the edges and my legs nearly gave out. Then the reflection caught up, synchronized, matched my movements again, and everything was normal. Except that when I looked at my own face in the glass, I could have sworn, and I mean this, I would swear it on anything you asked me to, that the corners of my mouth were turned up slightly more than they should have been. that my reflection was smiling at me just barely, with an expression that wasn't mine. I covered every mirror in the house the next day. Towels over the bathroom mirrors, a sheet over the decorative mirror in the hallway, the full-length mirror in the bedroom turned to face the wall. Megan didn't question it. She helped me. Neither of us said why. We worked in silence, moving through the house like people disarming bombs, careful and deliberate and deeply afraid. The night I finally couldn't deny it anymore. The night the house stopped pretending to be passive and revealed that it was actively, aggressively interested in us, was a Tuesday in late November. I remember the date because it was the week before Thanksgiving and we'd been talking about driving to Megan's parents' house in Virginia. Normal conversation, normal plans, the kind of mundane domestic choreography that keeps a marriage functional. We were in the living room. The fire was going. I was on the couch and Megan was in the armchair with her legs tucked under her, and we were watching something on television that neither of us was really paying attention to. The television turned off by itself. This had happened before, and I'd always blamed it on the remote or a power fluctuation or the TV's sleep timer. But this time the remote was on the coffee table, untouched, and the power was stable. The lights were still on, the fire was still crackling. The screen just went black, suddenly and completely, and the room went quiet in a way that felt wrong, the way a room feels wrong when someone is standing behind you and you don't know they're there. Then the whispering started. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It wasn't like hearing someone whisper in another room, it was diffuse, ambient, as if the air itself had learned to speak. I couldn't make out words at first, just a sibilant, breathy hissing that rose and fell in patterns that were almost rhythmic, almost like speech, close enough to language that my brain kept straining to decode it. Megan grabbed my arm. Her nails dug in hard enough to leave marks. "Danny," she said, her voice very small. "Danny, do you hear that?" "Yeah." I was surprised by how calm I sounded. Inside I was anything but calm. Inside I felt like the floor had opened up and I was falling. "Yeah, I hear it." The whispering continued for perhaps 30 seconds, and then it stopped, and then the television turned back onto a channel we hadn't been watching. A static-filled screen with no signal, the kind of visual snow that modern TVs aren't even supposed to be able to produce. We sat there staring at it, neither of us moving, neither of us speaking, until the static resolved itself back into the program we'd been watching and the room felt normal again, or as normal as anything in that house ever felt. That was the night Megan said she wanted to leave. She said it simply, without drama, the way you might say you want to change restaurants or take a different route to work. "I want to leave this house, Danny. Something is wrong here. Something is really, really wrong." And God help me, I told her no. I told her we'd sunk everything we had into the down payment. I told her we couldn't afford to sell at a loss, not after the closing costs and the repairs we'd already done. I told her old houses made weird noises and that we were letting our imaginations run away with us. I told her everything that a logical, rational, financially responsible adult would say, and every word of it was an excuse to avoid confronting the fact that I was terrified and had no idea what to do about it. She looked at me across the living room with the firelight flickering across her face, and something in her expression shifted. It was small, almost imperceptible, but I see it now with the clarity that only hindsight can provide. Something closed. A door inside her that had been open to me since the day we met swung shut, and I heard the lock click, and I didn't understand what I'd lost until it was far too late to get it back. She slept in the guest room that night. She said it was because she had an early morning and didn't want to disturb me, but we both knew that wasn't the reason. The reason was that I'd failed her. I'd chosen the house over her fear, her intuition, her safety. And the house knew it. December came, and with it a new phase of whatever was happening to us. The noises escalated, not just knocking and scratching now, but footsteps. Clear, unmistakable footsteps walking the second-floor hallway in the middle of the night. Heavy steps, measured and deliberate like someone pacing. They always stopped outside our bedroom door. I would lie in the dark listening to them approach, step by step, and then silence as whatever was walking reached our door and stood right there on the other side of an inch of painted wood and waited. I got up to check once. Only once. I opened the door fast, the way you rip off a bandage, and the hallway was empty. But the air was different. It was cold, not the cold of a drafty old house in winter, but a localized, specific cold, as if the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in a 2-foot radius right outside our bedroom door. I could see my breath. I stood there watching the little clouds of vapor dissipate into the hallway, and I felt something watching me. Not from a specific direction, not from a corner or a doorway. Just watching. From everywhere. The way the air watches you. The way the dark watches you. I closed the door and didn't open it again until morning. The footsteps became nightly. We stopped acknowledging them. We'd lie in bed and hear them coming down the hall and just wait. Wait for them to reach the door. Wait for them to stop. Wait for the silence that followed, which was somehow worse than the footsteps themselves, because the silence meant that whatever was out there was standing still, and standing still meant thinking, and thinking meant deciding what to do next. It was around this time that I found out about the previous owners. Not from Trish, she'd been vague about them, and I'd been too distracted by the price and the square footage to press for details. I found out from the internet, the way you find out everything these days. I was lying awake at 3 in the morning, the footsteps having just completed their nightly circuit, and I searched for the address. The first result was a news article from 7 months earlier. A couple named James and Catherine Whitfield had lived in the house for less than a year before James had been committed to a psychiatric facility following what the article called a psychotic break. He'd attacked his wife with a kitchen knife, not fatally, but severely enough that she'd required surgery. At his hearing, he told the judge that the house had told him to do it, that the wall spoke to him at night, that something living inside the foundation had been whispering instructions to him for months, and that he'd resisted for as long as he could, but eventually the voice became his own thoughts and he couldn't tell the difference anymore between what it wanted and what he wanted. The judge had ordered a psychiatric evaluation. James Whitfield was diagnosed with acute paranoid schizophrenia and was remanded to a state hospital. Catherine Whitfield had filed for divorce from her hospital bed and put the house on the market the day she was discharged. I read the article 3 times. Then I searched deeper. The Whitfields weren't the first. Before them, a family named Perez had lived in the house for 18 months. They'd left abruptly, breaking their lease, forfeiting their deposit. No public record of why. Before the Perezes, an elderly woman named Dorothy Calloway had lived there alone for almost a decade. Dorothy Calloway had died in the house. Natural causes, according to the death certificate. She was 83. But a local blog, the kind of amateur neighborhood history site that nobody reads, had a post about the Calloway house, written by someone who claimed to be Dorothy's nephew. He wrote that in her final years, Dorothy had refused to let anyone into the house. She'd stopped answering the phone. The few times he'd managed to visit, she'd seemed confused, disoriented, and had spoken about the man in the basement who talked to her through the heating vents. The family had attributed this to dementia. The nephew wasn't so sure. I kept digging. The house had been built in 1987 by a developer named Arthur Sykes, who'd gone bankrupt shortly after completing construction on the cul-de-sac. There was nothing unusual about the land it was built on. No burial ground, no site of historical violence, no ancient anything. Just a patch of North Carolina clay that someone had poured a foundation on. But the thing that caught my attention, the thing that made me close my laptop and sit in the dark for a long time, was a detail buried in a county records archive. Arthur Sykes hadn't just gone bankrupt. Arthur Sykes had disappeared. In March of 1988, 6 months after the house was completed, he'd failed to appear at a bankruptcy hearing. His car was found in the driveway of 414 Cresthaven Lane. His personal effects, wallet, phone, briefcase, were found inside the house. Arthur Sykes himself was never found. The case was investigated and eventually closed as a voluntary disappearance, but no trace of him had ever surfaced. No credit card activity, no sightings, no body. He'd walked into the house and ceased to exist. I should have woken Megan up. I should have started packing right then at 3 in the morning and driven us out of there before dawn. But I didn't. I sat with the information and I held it and I turned it over in my mind, and the thing I kept coming back to, the thing that shames me more than anything else in this entire ordeal, is that I still wasn't sure. I still thought there might be a rational explanation. I'd spent so long building a wall of logic and reason around the events in the house that I couldn't tear it down even when the evidence was staring me in the face. That's what the house counted on, I think. Not the believers, the skeptics, the ones who would explain away the impossible right up until the moment it swallowed them. I told Megan about the Whitfields, but I softened it. I said the previous owners had personal issues that led to a quick sale. I didn't mention the knife, the psychiatric commitment, the voice in the walls. She listened with an expression I couldn't read and then said, "Danny, I want you to know that I've been sleeping with the light on in the guest room because something stands in the corner of that room at night and watches me." The way she said it, flat, matter-of-fact, drained of all emotion, was more frightening than any scream. She said it the way you'd say, "I've been eating lunch at the new deli," or, "I've been taking a different route to work." She'd moved past fear into a place where the abnormal had become normal, and that terrified me because I realized I was headed to the same place. "What does it look like?" I asked, and the question felt insane coming out of my mouth. "It doesn't look like anything," she said. It's just dark. Darker than the rest of the room. Like a hole in the shape of a person. And it stands in the corner by the window and it watches me sleep, and sometimes when I wake up it's closer than it was when I fell asleep. We stared at each other across the kitchen table, and for the first time since the whispering started, we were both fully honest about what was happening. We talked for hours. We compared notes, laid out every incident we'd individually experienced and hidden from each other, and the picture that emerged was not of a haunting in the traditional sense. Not a ghost replaying some traumatic moment, not a spirit with unfinished business. It was something else. Something that was learning. Something that had been studying us, separately and together, figuring out who we were and what we were afraid of and how we operated, the way a predator studies the patterns of its prey before it strikes. The house was intelligent. That was the realization that changed everything. Not haunted, intelligent. And it was hungry. I tried to bring in help. I need you to understand that, because looking back it might seem like we were passive, like we just accepted what was happening without resistance. We weren't passive. I called a priest, Father Dominguez from the Catholic Church on Barton Road. He came to the house on a Saturday morning, a kind man in his 60s with a calm manner and a leather bag full of what I assumed were the tools of spiritual intervention. He walked through the house slowly, room by room, and when he came out he stood on the porch and he wouldn't look me in the eye. He said he'd pray for us. He said he'd include us in his intentions at Mass. He did not offer to come back. When I asked him directly whether he sensed anything in the house, he paused for a long time and then said, "I think you should consider moving, Daniel." That was all. He left and he didn't return my calls after that. I called a paranormal investigation team, one of those groups you find online, amateurs with infrared cameras and EMF detectors and a website that looks like it was built in 2004. Two of them came, a man and a woman, and they spent about 4 hours in the house running their equipment and taking readings. They captured nothing. No temperature anomalies, no electromagnetic fluctuations, no EVPs on their audio recorders. The woman said as they were packing up, that sometimes hauntings are selective, that the entity will only manifest for the people it's interested in. She said it matter-of-factly, as if she were describing the habits of a particular species of bird. "It knows we're not staying," she said. "It doesn't care about us. It cares about you." Then they left too. Christmas came and went. We didn't decorate. We didn't invite anyone over. We barely spoke to each other. The house had driven a wedge between us with a precision that felt surgical, and I couldn't tell anymore whether the tension in our marriage was the result of the haunting or whether the haunting was feeding on the tension. Both probably. The entity, I'd started thinking of it as an entity rather than a ghost, because ghost implied something that had once been human, and I was becoming less and less convinced that this thing had ever been anything of the sort, seemed to grow stronger when we fought. The nights after our worst arguments were the nights when the footsteps were loudest, the scratching most aggressive, the shadows most defined. It was feeding on us. On our fear, our anger, our isolation. And it was getting stronger. I remember a particular fight in late December, the kind of argument that starts about nothing, dishes in the sink, a light left on, and escalates into something vicious and deeply personal. Megan accused me of gaslighting her. She said I'd spent months dismissing what she was experiencing, making her feel crazy, choosing the mortgage over her sanity. She wasn't wrong about any of it. I shouted back that she was being paranoid, that she needed to see a therapist, that the noises were just noises and the shadows were just shadows and she was projecting her anxiety onto the house. The words came out of me with a force and a cruelty that didn't feel entirely mine, as if something were amplifying my worst impulses, turning the volume up on every unkind thought I'd ever suppressed. That night, after the fight, after we'd retreated to opposite ends of the house to simmer in our respective miseries, I heard something new. Laughter. Low, quiet, barely audible. Coming from inside the walls. As if the house were pleased with what it had accomplished. January was when the voice emerged. Not whispers anymore. A voice. Low, androgynous, coming from the walls, the floors, the ceilings. It spoke in fragments at first. Single words dropped into the silence of the house like stones into a well. Here. Stay. Listen. Always when one of us was alone. Always when the house was dark. I'd be standing in the kitchen at midnight getting water and I'd hear it behind me, "Daniel," and I'd spin around and there would be nothing, just the empty kitchen and the low hum of the refrigerator, but the word would hang in the air like smoke, tangible, almost visible. Megan heard it too. It called her Meg, which is what her father called her, which is what nobody else in the world called her. She'd never said this out loud in the house. She'd never mentioned her father's nickname for her to anyone. The house knew things about us that we hadn't given it, and I couldn't explain how unless I accepted something that my rational mind absolutely refused to accept. That the entity wasn't just listening to us. It was inside us, reading us, moving through our minds the way it moved through the walls. The night it mimicked my voice was the night I truly understood what we were dealing with. Megan was upstairs. I was in the basement, sorting through boxes we still hadn't unpacked. I heard footsteps on the floor above me, the kitchen, and I heard my own voice call up the stairs, "Megan? Can you come down here for a second?" I froze. I hadn't spoken. My mouth had been closed. I was standing in the basement holding a box cutter, and I heard myself calling my wife from the kitchen, one floor up, in a voice that was indistinguishable from my own. Not similar. Not a close approximation. Identical. Every inflection, every cadence, the specific way I said her name with the emphasis on the first syllable. I dropped the box cutter and ran upstairs. Megan was at the top of the basement stairs, one hand on the railing about to come down. She looked confused. "You called me?" she said. "No," I said. "I didn't." She stared at me. I stared at her. The house was silent around us, the kind of silence that feels like it's listening, that feels like the walls are leaning in. "Danny, I heard you. I heard your voice. You said." "I know what you heard. I heard it too. It wasn't me." The color drained from her face in a way I'd only read about in books and never seen in real life. She went white, genuinely white, the blood retreating from her skin as if something had pulled a plug. She sat down on the top step and put her head between her knees, and I climbed the stairs and sat beside her, and we held on to each other while the house breathed around us. And yes, I mean breathed, because by that point you could feel it, a subtle expansion and contraction in the very structure of the building, as if the walls were lungs and the foundation was a chest and the whole thing was alive, alive, alive. We should have left that night. We should have driven to a motel, to Megan's parents' house, to anywhere that wasn't 414 Cresthaven Lane. But we were paralyzed, not physically but psychologically. The house had spent months breaking us down, eroding our judgment, normalizing the abnormal, and by now we were deep enough inside its influence that leaving felt impossible. Not because we couldn't walk out the door, but because some part of us, some infected, corrupted part that the entity had been cultivating like a garden, didn't want to. That was the most insidious thing about it. It didn't trap us with locks or chains. It trapped us by making us complicit in our own captivity. February brought the violence. Objects didn't just move anymore, they launched. A coffee mug flew off the counter and shattered against the far wall while we were eating breakfast. A dining room chair slid 3 feet across the floor of its own accord, the legs shrieking against the hardwood like a scream. The framed wedding photo, the one Megan had put back after finding it face down, exploded. Not fell. Exploded. The glass blew outward as if a charge had been detonated behind it, sending shards across the living room. If I'd been standing 2 feet closer, I would have been cut to ribbons. The basement became impassable. The light down there stopped working entirely, not the bulb, not the fixture, not the wiring. The electrician came back and said everything was fine, that there was no reason the light shouldn't work. But it wouldn't. Every bulb we screwed in died within seconds, and the darkness down there was absolute, the kind of darkness that doesn't just block your vision but seems to push against you, to have weight and substance and intent. I went down once with a flashlight and the beam cut about 5 feet into the room before stopping, as if the darkness were a wall. The flashlight didn't dim. The beam simply ended, like light going into a black hole, and beyond that edge there was nothing, and from within that nothing I heard breathing. Not my breathing. Not Megan's. Something else. Something large and patient and very, very close. I didn't go into the basement again. Then Megan changed. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I wasn't sure it was happening. She started sleeping more, 10 or 12 hours a night, and when she was awake she was distant, unfocused, as if she were listening to a conversation I couldn't hear. She stopped talking about leaving. She stopped talking about the noises, the shadows, the voice. She stopped talking about much of anything. She'd sit in the armchair by the living room window for hours, staring at the yard, her expression blank and peaceful in a way that didn't match the chaos of our situation. "Are you okay?" I'd ask her over and over and she'd smile, a small closed-mouth smile that didn't reach her eyes, and say, "I'm fine, Danny. The house is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine." She said that phrase so many times that it stopped sounding like reassurance and started sounding like a script. Like something she'd been told to say. Like lines being fed to her through an earpiece from a stage director who was standing just out of sight. I noticed she'd started going to the basement. The first time, I found her standing at the top of the basement stairs at 2 in the morning, barefoot, in her nightgown, staring down into the darkness. She wasn't moving. She wasn't speaking. She was just standing there, one hand on the railing, her body perfectly still, as if she were waiting for an invitation. "Megan." I touched her shoulder. She didn't flinch, didn't startle, just turned her head slowly, too slowly, and looked at me with eyes that were hers and were also not hers, eyes that had something behind them that I didn't recognize, something old and cold and patient. "Go back to bed, Danny," she said. "I'm just getting water." The kitchen was behind us. The water was behind us. The basement was in front of her. She wasn't getting water. I led her back to bed and she went willingly, docilely, the way a sleepwalker allows themselves to be guided. She was asleep within seconds. I lay awake until dawn, listening to the house settle and shift around us, and I understood with a clarity that felt like a physical blow that the entity had made its choice. It had studied us, probed us, tested our weaknesses, and it had chosen. Not me. Her. She was the one it wanted. She was the one it was pulling toward the basement, toward the darkness, toward whatever waited at the bottom of those stairs. I started sleeping in front of the basement door. I dragged a sleeping bag and a pillow to the hallway and made a camp in front of that door like a soldier guarding a gate. Every night, between 2 and 4 in the morning, I heard the footsteps upstairs, Megan's footsteps, moving with the soft certainty of someone who knew exactly where they were going, and every night I was there when she reached the basement, standing between her and the door with my hands on her shoulders, guiding her back. She never remembered in the morning. Or she said she didn't. I wasn't sure anymore what she knew and what the thing inside the house was allowing her to know. The night everything ended, or the night our life as we knew it ended and something else began, was February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony isn't lost on me. I fell asleep. I'd been keeping my vigil for 12 consecutive nights, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and adrenaline, and on the 13th night my body simply quit. I fell asleep in the hallway, and when I woke up the basement door was open and Megan was gone. I don't remember the next few minutes clearly. They exist in my memory as fragments. The cold air pouring up from the basement like breath from an open grave, the stairs descending into a darkness so complete it seemed solid, my voice shouting Megan's name and the sound swallowing itself in the blackness below. I went down. I don't know where I found the courage, and maybe it wasn't courage at all, maybe it was something simpler and more desperate than that. She was my wife. She was down there. The calculation was that basic. The stairs were ice cold under my bare feet. The darkness closed around me like water. I couldn't see, not the walls, not my hand in front of my face, not the steps beneath me. I went down by feel, one step at a time, calling her name. The basement was different. Even blind, I could tell it was different. The space felt larger than it should have been, as if the walls had retreated and the ceiling had risen and the room had expanded into something that shouldn't have been able to fit beneath a colonial revival house on a quarter-acre lot in a cul-de-sac in North Carolina. The air smelled like earth and stone and something metallic like blood or copper, and the temperature was so low that my breath came in ragged gasps and my skin prickled with goosebumps. I found her in the center of the room. She was standing still, facing away from me, her nightgown white in the blackness, the only thing I could see, as if she were producing her own faint luminescence. Her arms were at her sides. Her head was tilted back slightly, her face turned up toward the ceiling. And she was talking. Not to me. Not to anyone I could see. She was speaking in a low, continuous murmur, the words too quiet for me to make out, and the cadence was wrong. Not her cadence, not her speech patterns, not her voice, but something that was using her voice the way you'd use a borrowed instrument, familiar in timbre but alien in everything else. "Megan." My voice cracked. "Megan, we need to go." She stopped talking. The silence that followed was the worst silence I have ever experienced. A silence that had texture, that had weight, that pressed against my eardrums like a hand. Then she turned around. Her eyes were open, but they weren't seeing me. They were seeing something else, something I couldn't see, something that existed in a layer of reality that overlapped with mine but wasn't quite the same. She was smiling. The smile was wrong. It was too wide, stretched across her face like a wound, and her teeth were visible in the darkness, white and gleaming, and for one horrible moment she looked like a stranger wearing my wife's skin. "Danny," she said, but it wasn't her saying it. The voice came from her mouth, but it originated somewhere else. From below, from the foundation, from the earth beneath the foundation. It used her vocal cords the way you'd use a puppet. "Danny, come downstairs. It's so quiet down here. It's so peaceful. You'll love it down here, Danny. You'll never want to leave." I grabbed her arm and pulled. She resisted, not with physical force but with a kind of inertia, a heaviness, as if the house were holding on to her from below, gripping her ankles with invisible hands. I pulled harder. She didn't budge. Let go of her, I said to the darkness, to the house, to whatever was standing in the room with us, invisible and vast and patient. Let go of her right now. The house answered, not through Megan this time. Through itself, through the walls and the floor and the ceiling, through every surface and every atom of the structure that surrounded us. The voice was deep, deeper than any human voice could be, and it vibrated in my chest like a subwoofer turned up beyond its limits, and it said a single word, no. What happened next I can barely describe because language wasn't built to contain it. The darkness in the basement began to move. Not shift, not ripple. Move with purpose and direction, coalescing in the corner of the room into a shape that was approximately human but larger, denser, a figure made of the absence of light, a shadow that cast its own shadow. It had no features that I could identify, no face, no eyes, no mouth, but it was looking at me. I could feel its attention like a hand on my throat. I did the only thing I could think of. I let go of Megan's arm and I hit the wall. I hit it with my fist hard over and over and I screamed, not words, just sound, raw and animal and desperate. I don't know why. Some instinct, some primal understanding that the house drew its power from silence and darkness and the slow, patient erosion of will. I made noise. I made as much noise as a human body can make. I screamed and I hit the wall and I kept hitting it until my knuckles split and blood ran down my fingers and the darkness recoiled. That's the only word for it. Recoiled. The shadow figure flinched backward, and in that moment of retreat, the hold on Megan broke. She staggered, blinked, and for the first time in weeks I saw my wife behind her eyes, confused, terrified, present. Danny? She sounded like someone waking from a deep sleep. Danny, where are we? Why are we in the basement? I didn't answer. I grabbed her hand and we ran. Up the stairs, through the hallway, through the kitchen, out the front door, into the February night in our bare feet and pajamas, across the frozen lawn to the car. I didn't grab keys, didn't grab wallets, didn't grab anything. The spare key was in a magnetic box under the wheel well and I fumbled it out with bleeding hands and started the engine and drove. In the rearview mirror, as we pulled away from 414 Cresthaven Lane, every light in the house was on. Every window blazed with light. The upstairs, the downstairs, the basement windows that I hadn't even known existed until that moment, small rectangular panes set into the foundation that glowed with an amber warmth that made the house look inviting, welcoming, like a home you'd want to come back to. I drove until the sun came up. We ended up at a motel off the interstate in Virginia, and we sat on the bed and shook, literally shook for an hour before either of us could speak. Megan had no memory of the basement. She remembered going to bed. She remembered a dream about a staircase that descended forever into a warm, dark place where someone was waiting for her, someone who loved her, someone who knew her name. That was all. We never went back. We hired movers to retrieve our things, and when they came back, the foreman told me something that I have never shared with anyone until now. He said that when they entered the house, it was clean, immaculate. The floors were polished, the counters were spotless, the beds were made. There was no sign that anyone had left in a panic. The house looked, he said, like it was expecting company. And in the basement, which they'd gone into to retrieve some stored boxes, they'd found something scratched into the concrete floor, scratched deep as if with a nail or a piece of metal. It was a list of names. 6 names arranged vertically like entries in a ledger. The first was Arthur Sykes. The last 2 were Daniel Morrow and Megan Morrow. The house wasn't haunted by something that had died there. The house was something. It had always been something. It had been something before the walls went up and the roof went on, something that lived in the land or beneath the land or in some dimension adjacent to the land, and when Arthur Sykes poured that foundation, he didn't build on top of it. He built around it. He gave it a body. Walls for bones, wiring for veins, plumbing for a circulatory system. He gave it a structure through which it could interact with the world, and it had been interacting ever since, calling people in, studying them, feeding on them, and adding their names to its list. I don't know what it does with them. With the names. With the people behind the names. Arthur Sykes was never found. The blog post about Dorothy Calloway mentioned that her body, when they finally discovered it, was found in the basement. James Whitfield is still in a psychiatric hospital, and the last I heard, he's made no improvement. He still talks about the voice. He'll talk about it until the day he dies. We sold the house. We had to. We couldn't pay the mortgage on a place we refused to enter. We sold it at a loss through a different realtor to a young couple from Raleigh. I didn't warn them. I know I should have. I know that makes me complicit, that somewhere right now there might be 2 people lying in bed at 414 Cresthaven Lane listening to footsteps in the hallway, hearing their names in the walls, watching shadows gather in the corners. I know that and I carry it. But who would believe me? What would I even say? Don't buy this house, the walls talk? The basement is alive? Something older than the foundation lives underneath it and it's keeping a list? Megan and I are still together, but we're different. The people who moved into 414 Cresthaven Lane in October, optimistic, in love, full of plans, don't exist anymore. They died in that house just as surely as if the entity had killed them outright, and what's left are two people who sleep with the lights on and flinch at unexpected sounds and can't look at each other without seeing the reflection of everything they endured and everything they failed to protect each other from. We don't sleep in the dark anymore. We don't talk about the house unless we have to, and we never have to. We moved to a new apartment in a new city, a bland, modern, characterless box on the 6th floor of a high-rise, and it's the most beautiful place I've ever lived because nothing whispers in the walls and nothing walks the halls at night, and the mirrors show exactly what they're supposed to show. There's no basement. I made that a condition of every apartment we looked at. No basement. I'll never go below ground level again. Megan sees a therapist twice a week. The therapist thinks we experienced a shared psychotic episode brought on by the stress of buying our first home. She's prescribed medication. Megan takes it. It doesn't stop the sleep talking. I see a different therapist separately, and I've learned very quickly that telling a mental health professional that your house was alive and hungry is a fast track to a diagnosis you don't want on your medical record. So I talk about stress. I talk about marital conflict. I talk about adjustment difficulties. I don't talk about the voice in the walls or the shadow in the basement or the list of names scratched into concrete. I keep those things in a locked room inside my mind, and sometimes at night I can hear something scratching at the door of that room trying to get out, and I don't know if the scratching is coming from inside me or from somewhere else entirely. But sometimes, and this is the part that keeps me awake, the part that makes me wonder if it ever really ended, sometimes I'll be falling asleep in our new apartment and I'll hear it. Faint, almost subliminal, easy to dismiss as the air conditioning or the building settling or the white noise of urban life. A whisper. Not a word, not a name, just a sound. A low, breathy hiss that rises and falls in patterns that are almost rhythmic, almost like speech. And sometimes, not every night, but sometimes, Megan talks in her sleep. She's never done this before, not in the 5 years I've known her. But now, 2 or 3 nights a week, she murmurs in her sleep in a voice that's hers and is also not hers. And she says things I can't quite make out, fragments of a conversation with someone I can't see. Last week, I leaned close to listen. I put my ear next to her mouth and I held my breath and I listened to my wife whisper in her sleep, and what I heard made me sit up in bed and turn on every light in the apartment and sit in the corner until morning with my back against the wall and my eyes on the door. She said, "I know. I'm coming back. I promise. We're in the apartment. We're 2 states away. We left in February and it's been months and we should be safe. We should be free." But the thing about 414 Cresthaven Lane, the thing I've come to understand in the weeks since we fled, is that we never really left. The house is patient. The house is smart. The house has had decades of practice, and it doesn't need walls and foundations and wiring to reach us. It just needs a foothold. Crack. A small, dark place inside the mind where it can plant a seed and wait. Megan talks in her sleep every night now. She talks about the stairs. She talks about the warmth. She talks about going home. And I don't know how to save her. I don't know if she can be saved. I don't know if the thing in the walls ever really let go of her, or if what I saw in the basement, that moment when her eyes cleared and she came back to me, was just another trick. Another performance by something that had already learned how to wear my wife's face and speak in my voice and say exactly the right words to make me believe we'd escaped. I'm sitting in this apartment with the lights on and the television playing, and I'm listening to my wife sleep, and I'm writing this because I need someone to know. In case something happens. In case we disappear the way Arthur Sykes disappeared. In case the next person to walk through the front door of 414 Cresthaven Lane finds 2 more names scratched into the basement floor and wonders who we were. If you're reading this, stay away from that house. Stay away from Millbrook. Stay away from the end of the cul-de-sac where the oaks grow tall and the front yard looks like a cathedral. And if you're already there, if you've already signed the papers and moved in the boxes and told yourself the noises are just the house settling, listen to me. Get out. Get out now. Don't wait for the scratching. Don't wait for the footsteps. Don't wait for the voice to learn your name. Because once it knows your name, it never forgets. And once it calls you home, you'll never want to leave.